Yep. So we're recording this as well, just so if you want to watch this replay of Scott's presentation, feel free after we get going. All right, let me go live on this real quick. Bear with me 30 more seconds and we will get going. Where did that go?
Man, Spear, you're already giving away your secrets. RV life?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. For a location, wherever I want to be.
There you go.
Kind of nice. It's pretty good.
Page, select page for money bankers.
Josh Bacon. Let's see. Philly Market wants to be like Scott when he grows up. There you go.
Yep.
From Waldorf. Spears
That's
in
my
his
boy.
RV. Lisa, realtor, investor, DC, Maryland, Virginia. Myself, Ian, Baltimore. Invest in whatever we can find good deals on. Brent, Ali, Florida, wholesale and investment properties.
Cool. All right, let me get rid of this. Let's see, stop share. There we go. All right. A few more people trying to hop in. Gotta go through in the middle of these. I'll just keep admitting as we're going through this. All right, so let's get started. Everyone, thanks for joining us. This is our monthly real estate investing incubator meetup group. If this is the first time you're tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you coming. Hopefully you'll get a lot of knowledge out of this, and you won't be wasting the next hour and a half with all of us. We've been doing the meetup group probably for about 5, 6, 7 years. We used to do it at our office, and then we jumped around to a lot of different restaurants throughout the Columbia, Maryland area. Obviously, we have a lot of folks from the DC area and the Baltimore area and some other markets kind of throughout the country. So we used to have about 200 people in person, and we used to have some really good speakers kind of pre-COVID. The one thing to know about the meetup group is there's no pitching, there's no selling, there's no gurus. Scott's not selling anything tonight. I don't think Scott has anything to sell, even if he was allowed to.
Right.
But it's just real estate investors that are doing deals that we can learn from each other. My business partner Chris Haddon and I started the meetup group along with Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse and his partner Dan. It's kind of been a good collaboration. And we've tried to just grow it as much as possible and bring in a lot of really good speakers. So thanks everyone for attending. A few quick housekeeping items, and then we'll do a quick introduction to Scott. He is going to do a presentation. It'll probably be, I don't know, Scott, what, 25, 30 minutes, give or take. And
Yep.
we'll try to keep it as interactive as possible. I know it's not the most fun thing in the world, since we're all virtual, to just stare at a computer screen. So we'll try to keep it as interactive as possible. If you have any questions during the presentation, let's just use chat for now. We'll start with that. Kind of Ian and I might go through a few things, and Chris might go through a few things and questions, like depending on kind of what direction it's going in. And then any questions throughout, feel free to chat. And at the end, we can unmute everybody and go from there. And then we can, you can raise your hand through Zoom and we can go through there if anyone has any questions. Ian, what else do you want to add to that? What did I miss?
There's not much to add. We're streaming live. We're streaming live over on Facebook. If you guys want to join us over here in Zoom, we will try to monitor both sides for questions. It gets a little difficult on Facebook, but we will get to you, and we will keep it as interactive as possible. I don't want to steal much more of the show. We could go on and on and on. But I think it's only fair and right that we introduce Scott Spear, who's become not only a business associate, but a true friend. I met him in Charlotte a few years back, and here we are today doing business together. We talk on the phone several times a week, always bouncing ideas off each other. And, he got to where he is today, living in his RV, doing exactly what he wants to do by accomplishing a little niche inside of this big real estate market. And there's so many ways, we talk about it all the time. There's so many ways to monetize money or monetize real estate. And Scott found a very good niche. made all the money he needed to, got to retire early, and is on the road right now. So Scott, enough about me. Introduce us, and more importantly, tell us where you're at now, doing your RV thing, and let's go from there.
All right, thanks for the intro on that. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've tried out different aspects of real estate, and what we're going to talk about tonight, rent to own. I did very well with it, had a good success rate, and willing to share information and help other people. Just hope I'm willing to, relay the information on to other people and help them to grow their business. There's lots of different ways to make money in real estate, and you just pick a couple of them, focus on them, and you'll do well in real estate. Right now, my wife and I, last November, it's been a long time goal of ours to hop in an RV and travel cross country. And last November, we sold our house in Rochester, New York. It's about 6 hours from New York City. Sold our house, 90% of our contents, moved into an RV, and now we've been traveling cross country ever since. We've been out to California, been to Texas, Arizona, Georgia, Florida. And right now we're in Roanoke, Virginia. My wife's parents live here, and we're just helping them through some health issues. And the great thing about it is I can be where I want, when I want. And that's a big thing with real estate, with the business that I built. So real glad. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So do you want to share your screen? Is that going to be the best way to do this? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think I got to set you up to do that. Does it look like you can do that now?
I don't see yet where I can.
A year and a half in, and Jason still can't use whatever we're on, Zoom. So I guess I can't say anything because I don't know what we're on. But
yeah, see if you can go to the bottom and click on share. If you can, I have your presentation and I can do it and slide through it. But
share. Let's see if this works.
But let's start with you and see if you can.
Let's see. I think we're in.
Perfect.
Is that good? Everybody can see my display here?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, thanks for everybody joining. Like I said, here to share information. Hope I can help some people who've been thinking about rent to own or looking at rent to own as a business. It was very, very good for my wife and I. There's a lot of things I liked about it. And everything I have on here really is based on Western New York, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, New York. I did my main focus in Rochester, New York. Some people call this rent to own. Other people call it lease to own. People call it option to purchase, lease to buy. To me, it's just another great way to make money in real estate.
And Scott, I know, and I'm guessing, I know a lot of people that do this around here locally as well in the Baltimore, DC market. And for the most part, obviously laws might be a little bit different, but obviously the principles are still, the overlying principles are still the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the numbers I'm going to show are based on the Rochester market. I know some of you are going to be like, what the heck? First time home buyer in Rochester is between $100,000 and $150,000 house. So that was my main focus on these rent to owns, was the first time home buyers. So that's the numbers I'll reflect. Let's see here now. Okay, good. I got this disclaimer on here. I don't render tax, legal, or accounting, investment, or professional advice. You should seek out an attorney. Anything that I tell you is really just information. It's worked for me. I'm going to tell you all my secrets and tricks, but before you go forward, you really should consult with like an attorney, your accountant. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. So I got the agenda, what it is and what it's not. We're going to talk about tenants versus candidates, how I advertise for them, how I work the terms usually, how I have people qualify, the paperwork. That's the most important part right there, just like any job. It's paperwork, gotta have your paperwork tight. And what at the end of the agreement, things don't work out or they need to extend, now what? I'm gonna go into detail on that. And then I'm also going to talk about the tax and the profit benefits of doing rent to own. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit on each of these. I don't want to really read them all off, but what it is and what it's not. Why I call it rent to own when talking to them. A lot of these people that you're talking to, first-time home buyers, they aren't really sophisticated. They don't know a lot of terms and such. And I really just make it simple to them. I just tell them, hey, you're renting to own the house. When you start getting into other terms, they just get confused. I just try to make it as simple as possible as I can for the people. It's a great way to get great quality cash tenants. I have a pre-qualification that people have to go through before they can move into one of my rent-to-own houses. And most of them are working, blue collar type people. They have jobs. They have some credit. And that's just how I work it. It's a great way to help others own a home. It's always fun. It brings me a lot of joy to see people who never thought they could own a house, own a home. For them and their family. In some cases, they're the first one in their generation or in their family to be owning a home. They come from generations and generations of renting homes. I show them a way to own a home. It's a great way to get your units completed. I've had some rent to owns that I didn't totally do a rehab on. Some of the rooms need to be painted. Maybe some drywall work need to be done, like basic things. A lot of cases, I would just let them do it, let them pick out their paint. I would pay for their paint. I'd inspect the house. The kids loved it. It was so fun to see the kids get all excited about being able to pick their room color. And so that's a good thing there. It's not get rich quick. I always say slow and steady wins the race. And I talked with Ian, I've talked to Jason about it. Just slow and steady and you're going to win. It's not a way to take advantage of others. I was talking with Ian and Jason about this a little bit earlier. I know some people that do this, they'll take like the option deposit and they, take advantage of people. They put people in there that aren't going to qualify. I don't agree with that. And I tell people, if that's why you're getting into this business, just don't do it. It's not fair and it's not good PR for us who are doing it. It's not owner financing. I don't offer owner financing on these rent owns. And it's not for everybody, investors or tenants. A lot of tenants, unfortunately, for a few more years are going to be tenants. They can't qualify to buy a house. They might never be able to. And some investors, you have to have some patience in doing this. And you have to stay in contact with the tenants, with the candidates, we'll say. And just some investors, they just want to flip a house and be done with it. So it's not for everybody.
Scott, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Just because I've, and again, I don't have the most experience of rent to owns. I don't know if everyone listening, I don't know what their experiences are either. But from what I've seen in the past, there's a few different ways to do it. And I'm curious kind of the majority of the ones that you're doing. Now, were you owning these houses first? And if so, and you're probably going to get to this, but like, how did you take ownership? Were you paying retail or under market value? So were you owning these properties first and then setting up a rent to own system so you could obviously, make more money on these deals than standard flipping? Or were you doing it where you would put a rent to own agreement in with a seller, right? And then you, in essence, would rent that out to another person and kind of make the arbitrage game? Because I've seen it being done a few different ways.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really glad you asked. I forget about that. I learned that from somebody recently that's how they do it. They'll put a house under contract and they'll put a lease to own agreement with the seller and they'll never own the house, which it's an okay way to do it, but it's not the way I did it. I always own these houses. I would buy the houses outright. I'd usually go with hard money lending on them. And then I'd take them and fix them up and then I'd put them up for sale or rent to own. I do know people that do it the other way. The other way is they'll have somebody who has some equity in their house. They'll put it under contract and say, I'll buy it in 2 years. And then they'll put a tenant in there. And in my opinion, there's too many variables there and too many things that could go wrong. And some of these sellers, they're entrusting in you that you're going to buy the house and then you don't perform and you're really putting them in a bad situation. So I never did it that way. There's probably nothing wrong with it. I just always
Sure.
own the house outright myself.
Sure. So you're buying these properties and then putting another rent to own tenant in there. And the thing is I think the beauty of it, and I think especially right now in today's market where everyone's having a hard time finding good rental properties or finding good properties that have enough room for a flip. In this particular case, and I'm not saying, you want to pay retail for one of these properties, but really, you go in there, it doesn't need a ton of, you don't need a ton of spread, right? Because you're immediately going to be renting them out with a rent to own for the next person. And, you can make money kind of both ways. So that's good. I think in a market like this, there's a lot of opportunity for this.
Yeah, and you're right. You can buy it on a thinner spread, like you said, because you're putting a tenant in there right away. And once they've gone through my process, they're good tenants. I have like a 70% conversion rate. It used to be 80%, but the government changed the way they looked at student loans a couple of years back. So to me, it changed. But yeah, you get a tenant in, you say, okay, in 1 year, you're going to agree to buy it for this price. They give you the option deposit, and I'm going to go into those details. And so you're getting money up front, you're being secured by that, and you're getting rent along the way, and you're getting somebody in there and they're going to buy it. Before everything went crazy with COVID, and I know how house prices are going now, this worked really well. Right now, the way as hot as the market is, it's just crazy what some houses are selling for, especially in Rochester. But the premise of this still works well. Okay. Tenants. If you're a landlord, you know about tenants. You know the pluses and minuses of tenants. In Rochester, New York, I don't know if this is every market, but in Rochester, New York, they stopped all evictions in March of 2020, and you still cannot evict tenants until, as of right now, I think it's the end of August. Even if they have a job and they're not paying rent, you cannot evict them. You cannot take them to court. That's one of the advantages of this system is if the tenant misses, I say 2 rent payments in a year, I could make the contract, the purchase rent to own contract null and void. I keep their option deposit. So that's why you're getting good cash paying tenants, because they want to buy the house. They're going to keep paying their rent on time. So that's another big benefit of this, especially in today's market with the way evictions are. We all know if you have tenants, they pay when they want. Candidates pay on time. With tenants, you fix it. Toilet's plugged, you fix it. Sink's leaking, you fix it. Candidates, they fix it. I have them treat it like it's their home. It's part of my rent to own agreement that any repairs they take care of. They're responsible for repairs. And they fix everything. They take care of everything. They call in people to fix things if things go wrong. Now, I'll work with them if they move in and like the furnace goes like a couple months after they're in there. Typically, I'm gonna work with them and replace the furnace. Down the road, if something goes like that, I'll replace it. But then I've written it into my agreement where I'm adding that to the price of the purchase. So they're getting a brand new water heater. They're 8 months into the agreement and they're going to be closing soon. Water heater goes, things happen. Yeah, we'll put in the water heater and then we just add that to the price of it. So tenants call all the time. How many tenants do you have that call you on Sunday for a furnace that was out Friday, and now you got a good guy over there to fix it on Sunday? My candidates, they rarely call. I rarely hear from them. I talk to them often, but when they have problems, they don't call me. If they have like I said, the things we discussed before, things to fix, they don't call me on that. Tenants, they live in a house. Candidates, they live in a home. People treat their place different when it's their home, when they know they're going to be buying it. They have their friends over and all that. They really take good care of these places. This one, tenants have dogs and cats. Candidates have pets. I don't know if you allow tenants to have pets in your apartments, but we all seen what happened with dogs and cats with tenants in the past. Candidates tend to take better care of their pets. Because once again, it's their home. They know they're going to own it, and that's a big benefit right there.
I like how you I just want to pause right there. I like how you flip it from a tenant to a candidate, because in the end they are ultimately buying your house, right? So I think that's a big key thing. But go ahead.
Thanks, man. All right. How do I find my rent to own people? Facebook. We know right now Facebook's a hot thing. You have the community Facebook page. If you have a house in, let's say, Brockport, New York, you find a community Facebook page for Brockport, New York. You put the house up there. Facebook Marketplace. That's probably lately where I found my most candidates, was through the Facebook Marketplace and Facebook page. Zillow. I put it for sale on Zillow. I take ownership of the house for Zillow. I put it for sale on Zillow, but then I also put in the comment section, it's a rent to own property. There have been cases where I put a property up for rent to own and people want to buy it. You just have to make a decision then. It's a business decision whether or not you want to sell it at that point, or if you want to do the rent to own on it. Back when we used to use Craigslist, and I still would use Craigslist. You can advertise it in the real estate for sale section and the rental section, but you have to be careful because Craigslist, when you put it as rent to own, even though you're selling it, sometimes they would flag you for putting properties in the real estate for sale section of Craigslist. Realtors. I let all the realtors know I'm doing rent to own. I had lots of good contacts. I still have realtors calling me today. People reaching out to me today. Hey, do you got any rent to owns? You know anybody has any rent to owns? Because the realtor knows that they're going to get paid when the house closes. I don't pay them up front or anything like that. Once their buyer closes on the house, they get paid their fee. So it's a constant source.
So they wait a full 2 years if it's a 2-year one to get paid?
I only do them for 1 year.
Oh, these are one. Okay, so these are rent to owns that they're a full year. They're 1 year.
Yeah. I only do them for 1 year, and I definitely will explain that why I do that.
Okay.
Some of them I'll extend. I don't hold everybody to that year, but there's reasons why I'll let people extend, we'll say,
Okay.
past the year. So yeah, most of them are willing to wait. It's sort of like me. I know I have the check coming when they buy the property, and I can it's kind of nice to rent to own because you go, okay, in November of 2021, I'm going to be selling this house. December of 2020, I'm going to sell this house. And you're going to close on it because they're making progress. It's really cool because that's money's coming and you know when it's coming about. So my existing tenants, you'd be surprised how many tenants will qualify. And they are too. When I talk with a tenant, hey, I got this house. They've been a good tenant in my rental for a number of years and I've got a rent to own. I'll talk to them and say, hey, have you ever thought about buying a house? Like, I didn't think I ever could. Well, let's talk with a mortgage person and find out. And they're surprised. I've been surprised. It's been awesome. And once you put somebody in a rent to own, they're telling 10 of their friends, and a lot of these people, like nurses and such, they're all telling their friends, and now their friends are calling you. Hey, do you have any rent to owns? I know what you did for Susie. Can you do that for me? It just doesn't stop. The word of mouth advertising is the biggest thing, and that's why I want to treat everybody right. And I think everybody on this call, you just want to treat people right, treat them with respect. And you're going to get more referrals than you know what to do with. And that comes down to the referrals too. The neighbors. It's kind of funny when I take on a rent to own house. They're like, hey, you're going to put tenants in there? I'm like, well, I want you to go find your new neighbor. Find somebody you want to live next to. See if they want to buy the house. And I've had neighbors bring me deals. They have brought me buyers. Been a lot of fun. Bankers and mortgage people. We all know mortgage people. They don't get paid unless they're doing a mortgage. They have somebody who's maybe not qualified, but they're making progress on fixing their credit. And they'll call me and say, hey, you ever rent down? I have this person. They're going to be qualified. They're not qualified quite yet. They need about 8 more months. Same thing. The mortgage people know the money's coming when they do that mortgage. So I've had a lot of mortgage people bring me business. And then local businesses. A lot of local businesses will let you post. You go and talk to them, tell them what you're doing, what you're trying to do for the neighborhood and all that. They'll let you post a flyer in there and they'll distribute them out and they'll call their friends and such. So advertising for this is probably the easiest thing. Finding that quality tenant is the hard one. This qualified candidate, we'll say. So that's it on advertising. Anybody have any questions on that?
What and I don't really want to ask some of these questions because I know that you're probably going to get to it, but
That's okay.
So is it called a deposit up front that you take? Is that the same term? I mean, it's so like, how much are you taking up front as a deposit? And then how much are they making, you know, there's three questions technically. It's how much they make up front, how much are they paying up front, how much do they typically pay per month? Is that how much of that's going towards the rent?
Okay.
And then we'll talk about some mortgage qualifications because it's technically an arm's length transaction. We can talk about that afterwards, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. When I talk to the candidates, I'm very upfront with them. I want an option deposit, and that's if they purchase a house, they get the option deposit back. If they don't purchase a house, they forfeit the option deposit because I'm taking the house off the market for them. So I'm losing potential buyers, but I want everybody to perform. So you're going to get that option deposit back when you buy the house. The option
How much is the deposit approximately?
5 to 10% of the purchase price. So if I'm selling a house for 150, I'm looking for $15,000.
And they have that money typically, like
do.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll take no less than 5% of the purchase price, but I'm looking more for 10%. They have some real skin in the game. Some of them, funny enough, like they're living in their parents' basement and their parents want them out of the house. They're like, hey, I'll put up the option deposit. I said, and I'm very upfront with whoever's putting up the option deposit. Understand if they don't perform, that doesn't come back. But it's been funny. I talked to some parents and they're like, yeah, I'll put up the $10,000 option deposit, just to get them out of my basement, get them on their feet, get them going. So I've had that. I've had grandparents, but most times I want the cash to come from them. I want them to have a real vested interest in the property.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. With the rent, I look for fair market. I charge fair market rent. I know some people that do rent to own will say, okay, the rent's $1,500. I'm going to charge you $2,000 and I'll put $500 every month towards the down payment on the house. That's smart, but in talking with my attorney in Rochester, New York, if you're taking a rent payment and you're applying part of it towards the down payment on the property, they have a vested interest in the property and you can't just evict them. You have to foreclose on them too. So what I tell people, and when people talk to me, they may have talked to one or two other rent to own people. I say, well, so-and-so is charging me X rent and he puts it towards the down payment. I say, I understand that. I'm charging you fair market rent. If you tell yourself you're paying $2,000 a month and you're paying me $1,500, take the extra $500 and put that in a separate bank account. Use that as your down payment on the property.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so and that's a New York law, who knows
Mhm.
if that differs elsewhere, but I think some places around here might be similar to that as well. So yeah, they're just paying rent, and chances are, the beauty of it is a lot of these, especially now, a lot of these, they're incentivized to buy the property. Like, could they buy it quicker if
Mhm.
you got it? Because like right now, if they can buy it quicker, it's better, and they're probably incentivized because with the low interest rates, their payments are probably going to be cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the type of person I want. One who's really motivated and they want to buy it as soon as possible. That's what I want in the house. I want them to buy it because I want to take that money and turn it too. There's some advantages to holding a house for a year and a day, and I have that on the last slide. I think it is. It's called long-term capital gains or short-term capital gains.
Sure.
So in some cases, yeah, let's just take it, sell it, let's do it again. But if you're like in the 11th month and they want to buy it, you really have to look at your tax consequences. Say, okay, if I hold this for, a year and a day, it's now long-term capital gains, which is less. So, but yeah. Yep. Anything else?
Nope.
No, we got some good questions coming in, but let's get through a few more of your slides, and then we'll hit some of these questions as they're pertinent to the slides that you're on.
Cool. All right. Yeah, we just answered these questions. This is great. Okay, I do it for 1 year. I know a lot of gurus and stuff. They teach to do it for 3 years. You can add in the 5% per year to the purchase price and stuff like that. I do it for 1 year. And here's the reason why. And this might be on the later slide. I qualify the person up front. The big step a lot of people miss, I have mortgage people that I work with, and I want my mortgage person to interview them. The person buying the house might try to fight. I already have a mortgage person I'm working with. I'm like, I understand that, but I need you to talk to my mortgage person. 2 reasons. Number one, they may have a better rate for you. Okay. Another thing too is my mortgage person knows the questions to ask, and they can tell if these people are serious about buying a house or if they just want to move in. But the reason I do it for a year is I know within a year whether or not they're going to buy the house. They're checking in with the mortgage person once a month. The mortgage person's giving me updates. They aren't giving me any personal details, no financial details. It's just, hey, I heard from John Smith. He called in this month. He's making progress. He has to pay down these bills, and he's really motivated to do it. The reason I only do it for a year is in a year, if they're not going to perform in a year and I can see that they're not, it's time to end that relationship. Some people, like the mortgage person, will call me and say, hey, I know they're coming up on a year, but they got like 2 more months. They paid down a lot of things. They really fixed their credit. I need a couple more months. Typically, I'll extend it. And there's some benefits of extending it too, if you want to. But I do it in a year. That way I know in a year whether or not they're going to perform. If they're not going to perform in a year, I just want to do this and get somebody else in there who's going to perform. That makes sense?
Yep.
Get all the money before moving. I've had people tell me, a good friend of mine says, when a tenant says, and this is a tenant, not a candidate, when a tenant says, I want to work with you, he says, they mean they want to work you over. I've had some people early on who are like, can I put up half the option deposit now and put up another half in 2 months? Or can I put up the option deposit now and give you the security deposit in 2 months? Those have typically not worked out, unfortunately. Some of them have, but what I want to do is I want to get the option deposit up front. I want to get the first month's rent, and I want to get the security deposit. Used to be I would charge 2 months security deposit. And that's something that I didn't do at first. I was just charging option deposit. I'm like, oh, if they don't perform, I get to keep the option deposit. I can fix up the house. But what happened on a couple of those is when they didn't work out, the people would leave the house and they didn't clean it because they knew they weren't getting anything back. Whereas if they knew they were getting a security deposit back, they tend to clean up the house. They tend to take care of things because they know they're going to get their security deposit back. With this too, I had a 70% conversion rate. 70% of the people that I put in a rent-to-own home, I think I said this earlier, became homeowners. They closed the deal. They performed. And that was really exciting. Like I said, I hear other people and their success ratio is not that high. For me, I really want them to own the house. I really want to put a qualified candidate in there. I really want to help this person to buy a home. I really sincerely do. And I talk with them all the time. And that's why I had a good conversion ratio on that.
And Scott, I know we're going to get into a case study or go over an overview of a deal, but there's some questions coming in just to clarify. Basically what you're doing is you would advertise rent to own. Someone would come in, say the house is going to trade at 150 grand. The rent's $1,000 a month. They would pay you $15,000 as an option deposit, as well as $2,000 in a security deposit. And in that year time, say they took the 6 months to rent it, and on month number 7 they buy it. They would buy it for the said 150,000 less their deposit, and you would have earned an extra $6,000 in rent. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep.
And when you were setting up their lease agreements, did you make them responsible for all the taxes, insurance, and everything else? Full utilities?
Just utilities.
Okay.
The property taxes and the insurance, I still own the property, so I took care of that. I built it into my rent. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, I'll say that's not me. on the phone.
I don't know what's going on. My wife's upstairs. All right, go ahead. You keep going. Don't
All
worry
right.
about me.
Cool. All right. Let's see. So qualifying. When I qualify the candidates, I ask them questions. I get them to qualify or disqualify themselves. I learned this from a very successful landlord who's a property manager too. He says, just keep them asking them questions. Let them disqualify themselves. And that's what he does. He just keeps asking questions. And, sometimes people just disqualify themselves. Why do you want to own a home? Where's the money coming from? How long have you been at your current job? Do you have the option deposit? I ask those type of questions, and just really getting a gut feel too for them. When you hold an open house, hold open houses instead of a one-on-one showing. We've all been down the road. Hey, I'll meet you there at 5 o'clock. You're there at 5 o'clock. They don't show up. I hold open houses and I tell people, look, I'm holding 2 open houses. These are the times. If you can't make it, I'm sorry. Maybe you can send a friend or another family member. But also you want to create that fear of loss. If there's 20 people there looking at a house, just like now the market's so hot, I can't imagine what's going through buyers' minds, that fear of loss. Well, I have to, make this big offer and all that stuff. But I want them to see other people are interested in renting, own this house or buying this house. So I want them to act. I want them to perform. Trust but verify. What I said earlier about the mortgage person being the key. Find a good mortgage person that you know and trust, and just talk to that person. Tell them what kind of questions you want them to ask. A good mortgage person knows whether or not somebody's going to be serious about buying a house, and a mortgage person isn't going to waste their time either. If they feel a person's not going to buy the house, even on a pre-qual letter, they're not going to waste their time. A good mortgage person doesn't do that. So you want to find a good professional mortgage person that you can work with on this. Do they have a steady job? What's been their job history? The more I'll ask that question, and the more of these questions that they answer that I can check out that they answer right, the higher they go on my candidate, the more likely they are going to be the candidate. They have a steady job. They talk with my mortgage person right away. I've had people literally sit in the driveway and call the mortgage person. The mortgage person will call me and say, hey, John Smith, say, just looked at the house. He just called me. He started the paperwork. That person's serious. And then let's see. And then they have the option deposit. They have their own cash for the option deposit. They have their own cash for the other deposits. I stack rank everybody, and I'll take the top candidates and I'll choose that candidate. And sometimes you have to call people, say, hey, this one didn't work out for you, but if I have another one come up, I'll let you know. Like I said, do they have the funds and where are they coming from? So paperwork. You should do a lease. You need a lease. You need to have a lease and a purchase contract. They need to be 2 separate agreements because they are renting the property and they're also purchasing the contract in the next 365 days. You should keep those separate. From a legal standpoint, that's how my attorney told me to do it. So that's what I did. In your rent to own agreement, you need to have an agreement with your terms and conditions in them. Hey, something breaks, it's your responsibility to take care of it. This agreement's for 1 year. You have to pay your rent on time. You have to follow up with the mortgage person. That's all in my terms and conditions. And I talk to them often about their terms and conditions. I've had people call me, say, hey, the water heater just went out on the property. I'll refer back to the terms and conditions, say, okay, I understand that. Now you're going to be a homeowner on this. Remember, in our terms and conditions, we talked about if the hot water heater goes, it's going to be your responsibility to take care of it. And they're like, oh yeah. And I had one guy, man, he got the biggest, nicest hot water heater. It was $3,500 that he put into my house, but he knew he was going to buy it. And I was just like blown away that, I couldn't believe a single family house. It was $3,500. He showed me the bill. And stay in contact with them too. Talk with these people, become friends with them. It's still business, but you want to build a relationship with them. You want them to know, you want them to perform. The kids, when you show up and the kids are like, hey, Scott's here, cool, let me show you my room, it's their room. They're excited. It's fun. So just stay in contact with them.
Hey, Luis, I'm gonna unmute you real quick to ask your question if you're still there. Hang on one sec.
And I got a few questions in the chat as
Okay.
well.
Okay, yeah.
Is Luis unmuted? Well, you figure that out real quick, Scott. Mandy Nichols, I probably apologize, Nichols Salat was asking, inside your paperwork, at what point are you dictating what the sale price is going to be?
When I put the property up for sale, this is one of the gotchas where now it's different because you're getting multiple offers and stuff like that. I'll be honest with you. I did my last rent to own in December of 2020. I agreed with this kid to buy the house, before COVID started, really, and he closes. Now, I think you just maybe you pay for an appraisal, or if you have realtor friends, have them do a fair market analysis, and that's what we agreed to on the price.
But you're agreeing to it upfront before anybody moves in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean we're also in a funky time right now because you buy a property today and it's worth 10% higher tomorrow. So it's like, oh shoot, what did I do? But typically that's not the case. Typically it's whatever the fair value is probably stays somewhat consistent. So yeah, I mean I think the answer is you figure out what price you want for the property, right? You figure out what you want for the property, and it's just like any sale, right? It's getting prolonged into the future.
Yeah. And you can dictate your price. You typically can ask higher than, before COVID, higher than market rates on these properties. You're not gouging the people, but hey,
No, I think that's right.
spend more
I
money.
think that's right. You're selling at a premium because you're giving them a non-traditional way to get into a property and to take ownership. Now, obviously, we can talk about the financing side with not arm's length and appraisal, or arm's length and appraisal when we get to that section. Luis, go ahead if you're still there to ask your question.
Yeah, I'm here. What I wanted to ask him was as far as when you have the tenant that gives you the 10%, it's taking on they're paying you the monthly rent or mortgage for place. How has it been now with COVID? Have these people been able to still keep on paying you, even though, let's say that they lost their job or whatnot? How have you adjusted to be able to handle those situations?
And that's a great question. And I haven't had that issue. I would treat it on a case-by-case basis. That really would be a tough call on that one. And it's really a case-by-case basis. I haven't had that, so I can't really answer that one myself. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess at least what you're getting at is, hey, like they can't afford to pay it anymore from unforeseen issues, and like they don't want to lose it. They still want that house. And I would guess just like any other business dealing is, you do what's kind of best that benefits both parties. And if it's like, listen, if you don't want this house anymore and you're going to walk away from it, that's fine, but if you still want it, hey, let's work together on this thing and let's extend it a little bit longer. So I think let's just, I think a lot of things have come up, and a lot of us inside our businesses have been creative in order to still make it kind of a win-win fair transaction. I think that's probably the best way to look at it.
Yeah.
All right.
That help, Louise?
He's muted again. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Real quick, hey Scott, there's been a few
Yeah.
questions that come up. I was just scrolling through your presentation. One of them was again from Mandy, and another similar one from Tech is, I guess at this point when you're vetting people, how are you vetting them? How are you deciding, hey, like, you're talking to your mortgage broker and someone's like, hey man, they're not qualified today, but they're on a payment plan. How do you feel? How do you get comfortable that they're going to qualify a year from now? So I guess kind of what your overall vetting process is and how you kind of work through some hairy situations if they arise.
Yeah, it's it's that gut feel that you get for people when you're talking to them. And, you know, I kind of go on my gut feel, and also I go on my mortgage person's gut feel. But the thing is, I usually have enough qualified candidates where like somebody's really rising to the top. It's like they're checking all the boxes. And these other people who may not be ready to, I tell them, look, work with a mortgage person. At the time, I'm gonna have other houses, or I know of other houses. So, you know, it's one of those part of that vetting process, kind of like if they're checking all these boxes, okay, you're the top candidate. So
I think I can answer some of those things as well, because I think
Okay.
it's like, what are some specifics why someone wouldn't qualify now, but they might later? Well, there's a lot of reasons. So let's say somebody, you know, is new in the workforce, right? And they, you know, a mortgage company typically wants, and again, we're kind of in an interesting time right now, where your qualifications and low LTVs are a little bit more relaxed. But in general, you know, they need 2 years, maybe 3 years of employment history, right? Someone might have been a business owner and they weren't getting consistent income, right? So they couldn't qualify for a conventional home mortgage. They just got out of college, or they're just entering the workforce. I mean,
DTI.
their debt to income, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they were making $50,000 a year and they couldn't qualify for a house that they needed. Now maybe they're making $60,000 a year, so they can qualify for a year. Maybe they had, you know, a past bankruptcy that is going to be expunged from their thing. Maybe the qualification is a 660 credit score and they have a 640 credit score. So there's a lot of instances out there. Where someone might not qualify right now, but they could qualify, you know, and their goal is to work to qualify in the future, you know. So debt to income ratio, like you said, you know, whatever it is, they just got married and now they have 2 household incomes instead of 1 household income. So there's probably more than you know, you think of instances why they might not qualify today, but they might qualify tomorrow. And, you know, this is kind of a good path. I think it's very common.
And also, Scott, when it comes to paperwork, are you recording it? Maryland's relatively easy. It's expensive, but it's relatively easy to record. Were you recording this purchase contract in the land records to protect them, or were you holding this purchase contract in escrow with a title company somewhere so the renter had some sort of security?
Yeah, New York State, we have to use attorneys to close on properties, or at least that's what my attorney tells me. But so we don't really use title companies for closings. But yeah, my attorney has a copy of the purchase contract.
So it's basically as good as being in escrow or being in the land record. Like here, you could do either, you know, right in the land records. I know people that have done that here in Maryland, where they've recorded their lease option into the land record so that property can transact without them. And you know, I think some people are combating this bad aura around rent to owns. You know, I'm sure you can look up any major city where there's that one guy that's just trying to pick up fees and go. So, but
Yeah.
all right, what we got for the next slide?
All right.
I'll go back to our questions.
Okay. End of the agreement. Now what? You know, the year's up. They didn't perform. You know, you got some decisions to make. You have options. It's you want, like I said, I want everybody to perform. I want everybody to buy that house, you know, within a year. But if they don't, you know, they've been communicating with you, you work with them. I'm not going to extend it another year because they haven't taken the steps they need to qualify for a mortgage. You know, the gig's up, and they know, you know, they know in advance. It's like, hey, you know, you're coming up on the end of your agreement. You know, things haven't worked out. I'm sorry. And, you know, you just part ways. But you do have options. You can raise the rent. You know, hey, I was charging you $1,500 a month. I've done these, but I fully explained to the person why I'm doing this. My costs have gone up over the past year. You haven't purchased property. I have to raise up your rent. You can raise a purchase price. When I make an agreement with somebody and they contract for that year, I agree to that purchase price. I've had people a year ago, you know, I offer to sell them the house for 120. They go to buy the house a year later, and now the house is worth 150, 160. I agreed to sell it to you for 120. I'm honoring my agreement. But at the end of the year, like if they didn't perform, I could have went back and said, hey, I knew the original purchase price was 120. I still want to stay in the game. I think you can perform in 4 to 6 months, but the new purchase price is this. If you want to do that, it's all business for you. You decide how you want to handle it. You can ask for more of an option deposit. Hey, I'm going to extend this thing. I need $5,000 more option deposit because we didn't perform, so I need to secure that. Or you could do all the above. I've had some cases where rents in that market just went through the roof in a year. The value of the house went up. The person had made good progress, but they still needed time. I don't want them to lose their option deposit, but I'll tell them, look, your rent's going to go up a couple $100 a month. The purchase price, we're going to adjust it. Your assessment went up. In New York State, everything's assessed at 100%, or at least in Monroe County, I'll say. The assessment went up on the property. We're going to change it. We're going to change the purchase price. And I don't want you to lose your option deposit. I still want you to perform, but I want you to put up $5,000 more. As long as you're working with them and you're honest and you're sincere, they understand. And these are the people that I want to work with. Like I said, you can find it city after city. Some people that do this love when they don't perform. They get to keep the option deposit. I don't want that. I want them to perform. I want them to buy a house for them and their family. That's what I want to have happen. So if you go into it with that heart, I think you'll do everything right.
Scott, is this a true statement? Someone who enters into a contract for 1 year with you for the lease and the option to buy, performs on their rent for 1 year, but does not perform on their purchase in 1 year, would technically be in default of their contract, and you could go your separate ways, retain your option deposit, and then decide if you want to continue to rent to them or extend or have them out of the house because you don't want to renew the rental agreement.
Right.
Okay. I'm not saying that you do that, but that is at that end of that year, by technicality, they've defaulted on their contract on the option to buy. So you want to be very careful up front when establishing your guidelines that you're setting these people up to succeed and you're not just looking for these failures. And I think that's what you're ultimately getting at.
Yeah. No, thanks for pointing that out. And you're right. I want to be upfront and honest with them. And, as things are starting to come to an end of the year, we've already had conversations. Those conversations are hard sometimes. And some people, it's like tennis. Sometimes you're going to have a little battle on your hands, but treat it professionally, treat it like business. You'll make out okay on this.
Real quick, Jamaica was asking, or I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. I apologize, everybody. People butcher my name all the time too, so I apologize. Do you ever get buyers to ask for concessions when they go to close, or is everything pretty much pre-negotiated and there's not any issues at the closing table?
Pre-negotiated. It's like when they put in the purchase contract, they have a certain amount of time to get an inspection done. Granted, the inspection's based on a year ago, but they've had a chance to do the inspection before they even move in. Most people don't ask for that. Once in a while they do, but yeah, no concessions.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Here's a profit and tax benefits. You do a flip in 4 months. Okay, this is a little bit older slide, but you do a flip in 4 months, you sell that house for $124,900. If you do a rent to own, after you're done working on the house, you say, okay, in 12 months, you're going to buy this house for $129,900. So there you're getting more money. Purchase price, same property, same purchase price. Closing costs stayed the same. The loan, typically on these properties, I'm getting hard money or private money. I gotta say it for Jason. This is just an example, okay? It's 12% and 2 points. That's an example, okay? It's different for every market. It's different for every borrower. It's different for every lender. I just use this. This is just example purposes only. Then you have your expenses, your taxes. Property taxes in New York, it's not unusual for property taxes to be $500 a month on a house this price. Then you have your insurance. You're carrying the insurance. the utilities. Now, once a tenant moves in, I don't pay the utilities anymore, but for the first 4 months that I was working on the house, getting it ready, I had utility expenses. The rehab is really the same because you're selling the end product. Rental income based on $1,500 a month, you're collecting $1,500 a month for 9 months. Total profit before taxes, right there on the bottom line. Here's the big difference. Your federal taxes. You have short-term capital gains that you have to pay if you hold a property for less than a year. A year and a day, I typically do it a little bit longer than a year and a day that I hold a property. Then you pay short-term capital gains on your profit. So that's a big difference right there. Then New York State tax, and then the hypothetical profit that you'll make.
I'm just glad we found you operate in a state that is expensive as Maryland. So this is pretty somewhat comparable. Real quick, what I want to ask you is the deposit when you receive it, the option contract deposit. Do you have to capitalize that gain? Say you enter into a contract for 18 months, or you're saying a year and a day. So there's a possibility that you have to do your tax return because you do it in July and December 31st comes up. So you're doing your taxes for the year. Are you capitalizing that gain then, or is it held until the time of the sale?
Held until the time of sale. That's how I've done it.
And then if someone doesn't perform, that is treated as what type of income? The deposit, say someone doesn't perform.
You have to ask my tax preparer.
Fair enough.
I
Jay,
mean,
would you know?
I mean, some sort of ordinary income.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, just
yeah,
wondering.
I mean, high tax bracket, ordinary income. So you're leaving that in like an escrow account or somewhere, you know, kind of like a security deposit type of thing, because really what it is, it's earning, right, an earnest money deposit for a year.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
it varies state by state.
You're not
In
even
some
picking it up.
cases,
You're not
you
even
have
picking
to
it up
leave
as
it.
income.
Right.
Which it isn't. I mean, you're not doing anything with it. You're holding it for it as a deposit. So I guess it depends on state by state, but
Yeah.
And I think something that you didn't put in here, you know, we could ask your accountant, but I would think that the rental income, should there be any, I don't even know if they would set a depreciation schedule up for that 1 year, but you know, if there's any cost basis that's going into your property, you know, you're going to get some benefits from the taxes and everything else on that side of things as well. So,
Good point.
you know, it makes sense.
but I mean, that's the power, right? Like it's this is essentially option contracts, which when I look at stocks, that's what I get more excited about. Not that I'm a stock trader, but this is what all the guys are doing when they're optioning stocks, right? Like you're betting, you know, either the market's going to go up or get down and you're getting paid a premium, right? Like in this case right now, if someone optioned a house, right? Like values are going up, they're winning and they're paying a premium to win. And Scott would be losing in this situation. But if market's trailing down, he's earning income. And he locked his profit in, right? So it's similar, I guess, to stock options for those of you that are big stock traders, which I'm not, but that's kind of what I'm relating this to. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think real estate typically stays, I mean, listen, we've had a big, you know, it went down and then it swung way back up. But I think kind of most times, you know, in a 3-year span, this differs, but on these, most of these are a year. So stuff stays, you know, pretty stagnant in a year, especially. So are these considered like where does this model work the best, do you think? Like just under median housing prices? Like, you know, like what price? Because I know this is in where you are in New York, but depending on what area of the country you're in, what, you know, workforce housing, like where does this
Yeah.
work the best?
You know, the first time home buyer
First time home buyer.
price. Yeah. And like I said, in Rochester, first time home buyer price runs between 80 and 150, 160. At least it used to. And I probably think that's still the case. That's where this works the best because a lot of these people renting down are typically first time home buyers. So, yeah.
very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that thing I love about this too is, you know, your payday's coming. I think Jason put it in, you get paid today, you get paid along the way, and you get paid at the end. You know, your payday's coming. Mortgage person's like, hey, they're going to qualify. They're going to close in December. Everything's good. You know, the payday's coming. That's why you can kind of balance these things out. Interesting thing too is let's say you're due to close December 2021. You have an option deposit, it's due December 2021. You have a good tax person, you can talk with your tax person and say, hey, I have this, I can close it in December, or I can bump it over to January. And I've done that in a couple cases where it made more sense for me to close it in December or close it in January, just because of the tax implications for me. And I go back to the buyer and I say, hey, here's what I'm up against. You okay with this? Like, yeah, we're okay. We'll close in December, we'll close in January. Because I'll give the same flexibility to them. And like I said, the payday is coming. You can set these up every quarter. You're going to close on one. Next slide I have kind of shows, I don't know what everybody's median income is, but if you have an income of $60,000, how you can replace that with rent to own. I use that for the Rochester example because that's on the higher end or upper end, we'll say, median income in Rochester.
And Scott, how many of these did you do? Don was asking, how many of these did you do in Rochester when you were doing these?
I've done about 50 transactions with these, but also this is not just my own, but also with people that I trained how to do it, people I partnered with how to do it too. Most of them were mine, but I did have some instances where I had partners where like we were 50-50 partners. But yeah, 50 plus transactions.
50 and retired. That's all you got to do, right?
Yeah, that's what they say. No, 50, and then you can go look at other asset classes, but that's what it is. It's nice and steady, it's slow and steady. And you can, the nice thing about this, you can work a W-2. If you're still working a job, you can still work your W-2 and do this at the same time. That's a beauty.
Is this one of those situations where you want to, when you're doing these houses, you want to assume that you're going to get stuck with them long term? Did you ever go into that, like thinking, okay, well, if this goes sideways, I could potentially be stuck with this house for the next 5 years until I find the right person?
I've thought about it. I've never had it happen.
Okay.
Yeah, because typically if the first one doesn't work out as rent to own, then I go into the long-term capital gains because I've had it for a year. Then I'll just put it on the market, sell it,
Right.
redeploy my money.
There you go.
Yeah. Wash, rinse, repeat. Do it again. So, all right. So last slide. Here's how to replace a $60,000 a year income. Some people laugh at this, but if you sell one rent to own a quarter, you make on average $11,400. That's 45 grand a year. You own 6 rentals. Some are rent to own, some of them are just rentals that you're holding, and you're making $200 a door. That's 14.4 a year. That's 60 grand. And you can do this over and over and over and over again. And you can go bigger too. Like I said, this gives you the time to do what you want, when you want, where you want. So that's it. That's the presentation. People got questions? Bring them on. I can hang out and help people, and I hope people got some good benefit from this.
Hold on, I'm muted. Ian got muted. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, we'll go through the chat real quick, see if there's any other stuff.
Yeah.
I actually have a few questions related to some mortgage stuff.
Tech.
What's that?
Good.
Yeah, and then there's some other questions that are in here in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, we can unmute you as well. I guess there's no complications with arm's length transactions. So let's just walk through the mortgage side of things, because kind of I'm on the finance side, so that's the stuff that always comes to mind. So let's say they contract a freight for $100,000. They give you $15,000 up front as a deposit. They're paying rent. It's an arm's length transaction between you and them. Not typically banks are a little bit more diligent on underwriting on arm's length transactions, and that's when you have, relationship with the buyer or seller, because you could potentially, if you want to do shady business, side deals, things like that, compared to a non-arm's length transaction where you guys don't know each other. So I guess, might not have any issues with that, but I guess in essence, they're buying it for 100, there's $15,000 deposit, and it's the exact same type of transaction. It's just 365 days later, then me giving you a $15,000 earnest money deposit and closing in 30 days from now. It shows up the same way on the HUD one, $15,000 deposit. And everything else, I guess, is the same, right?
Yeah, it really is. Just like any purchase contract, close on or about, at least in New York State, the contracts that we use, you put a close on or about that date. And what I do is close on or about a year.
Got it. So this is a good question because this is common, I think. So what happens when what happens if the appraisal comes back and it's less than the purchase price, right? I don't know if you've ever had appraisal issues that come up, but they come up. And let's say the buyer doesn't maintain the property and the value ends up going down because the lack of that. Now, in essence, you have a $15,000 deposit, right? So that's obviously, or a 10% deposit. So that's helpful. Like, what are some things that would occur in that case? And it's just a workout.
I got lucky. I had that happen. But in the terms and conditions of my rent-to-own agreement, they have to maintain the property. They have to pay their rent on time. They have to, let's see, and they carry renter's insurance. And the biggest thing is you're going, I would stop by like once a quarter at least and just check on them. I'd go in the house and see what's going on, just to go meet with them. See how the family's doing, see how they're doing and all that. But, just like a good landlord, you're kind of going in and you're just scoping things out, seeing how well they're taking care of the place.
Yeah.
So, and I address it early. Most times I address it early. I will say there's a couple times I let things slide and you just pay for it, when you do that.
Yeah, I think it's, you treat it like a business like anything else. And any deal you ever do in real estate is a relationship game. And the longer the term of the deal, the longer the relationship is. If you have a tenant or a rent-to-own buyer, if you have a contractor that's in a project for a long period of time, you have to have a better relationship with them than a vendor that's doing a 10-minute task for you, right? Like, you don't have to have that great of a relationship with that person. So the bigger the project and the longer the term the process is, the better relationship. So I think the answer, a lot of this goes back to like, hey, if stuff changes, they didn't keep up with the property, we're renegotiating. Like, that's part of it. Things happen like that. You go buy a property from a distressed seller and all of a sudden, hey, they didn't decide not to pay their taxes when they told you the taxes were paid. And now, you're at the settlement table, there's a $4,000 bill. Who's paying that, right? You work it out. Like, that's part of it.
And I think something that you have here is that you've earned rent in that time frame, right? And I think something that Scott does very well is he's in a relationship to help people succeed. And I don't know if you guys noticed that he's brought it up several times, right? And I think something that you could do is if it's a depreciating value for some reason, maybe no fault to the owner, it's just the way the market's going, and they're going to save money by transacting the house at that price. And as long as you've capitalized out your investors, who's to say you can't owner finance that difference, right? Who's to say you can't wipe it clean? You're doing 50 of these or 20 of these in a year, you might have to write off a little bit of a loss to help yourself on your taxes. That could be another way to look at this. In the end, I think Scott has presented it very well about capitalizing your money, earning the returns that you're looking for, and moving forward. And, I think one of the reasons you were so successful is because you were good at vetting candidates versus tenants. And someone had brought it up and it came up a few times. Can you just name like 3 points, or like, what were your top 3? Like, these things pop up on an application, I know I want to work with these people. Like, what was your green lights or your check marks that you had to see that help you vetted very good candidates versus tenants?
The option deposit, that was a big plus. They show up to the open house with their family in tow. That's a big plus. And my mortgage person, that's probably the biggest key. And I've had people come back to me and say, hey, I did your rent-to-own program, it didn't work. I didn't coach anybody on this or anything like that. They just said, yeah, I did what you showed and it didn't work for me. Okay, well, did you have them talk to a mortgage person? Well, no, I figured that they had a pre-qual letter. So that's the thing. If they have the option deposit, that's a big plus. Talk with my mortgage person. My mortgage person asks their line of questioning. My mortgage person says that they're going to qualify in a year. That's another big green light. And then the third one is, they show up with their family and they're sincere. You can tell that they're serious about doing it. It's that gut feel that you go, yeah, these people are going to perform.
And that's a good point that I think a lot of things get lost because when we're fixing and flipping, everyone's like, okay, let's just get it done. You trust your realtor. The realtor's like, oh yeah, they got a pre-qual letter. I know this realtor. They're good to go. They're good to go. But really, when you're selling that property, you actually have the right to ask, hey man, like what is your pre-qual? Have you ever gone through these underwriting? Have you met these benchmarks? Are you actually going to close? Have they gone past just the BS front door, right? Like you actually have those rights to, and right now it doesn't really matter because they're giving money away, but things were a little bit tougher when flipping 14, 15, you could ask some of those harder questions to find out, you would really take the time FHA versus conventional at that point to understand where they were going. So
Yeah, and Catherine, I'm gonna unmute you in a second. I just want to go through a few of these other ones real quick. Shouldn't we just put a term in the agreement that the buyer will make up the difference? Sure. I think whoever does your legal agreements, and I think that question relates to if it doesn't appraise. And I think, as you do real estate deals and you work with whoever's doing your legal docs for you, it's an ongoing moving target. You continue to change things as you run into issues. And that's a good one. Hey, if it doesn't appraise, who makes up the difference? But I think, you're making your money on the front end on this one, just like any other real estate investment, that, Scott's making sure that, he's putting the right tenants in place to begin with. He's making sure that they're getting a big enough deposit on the front end that it's like, no, we're going to sell it at 150. I don't care that it appraised at 145. Like that's on you, that was the deal type of situation. There's a few other things. If you're doing fix and flips, does your fix and flip loan last for a year? Or do you refinance during the 1 year period? I think it just depends on, I could probably answer this question. It just kind of depends on the situation. If it's a 1 year loan, do it that way. If you can get, if it makes sense and you can get significantly cheaper terms, yeah, maybe refinance, maybe get, more expensive loan just to acquire it and then get a cheaper term, double check to make sure there's no prepayment penalties or things like that. And if it's a 1 year loan and, with Scott's strategy or whatever, in order to, you want to sell it a little bit after a year, maybe, talk to your lender and, maybe pay, do an extension if you need to. So I think that's case by case, depending on the situation. All right, Catherine, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead. How are you?
COVID's almost over. He's almost got this.
All right, Catherine, if you can hear me.
I think you unmuted the wrong person, wrong Catherine.
No.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we're here
there
now.
you go.
How are
Yep.
you?
Oh, okay. I had to unmute myself. Sorry. The deposit on the front end, 5 to 10%. When they go now to the finance part, they're going to have to put down their additional down payment for the loan, correct?
Maybe
Yeah,
not.
however they work that, yeah. Some people are getting, loans at, like VA loans with no money down. Some people are getting loans at 3% down.
Yeah.
But
Do
they
they,
get that
do
option
they give
deposit
you
back.
grief about having that large down payment and then coming back and having to do another one with closing costs?
Well, so let's use real numbers. So let's say they're buying it for $100,000 and they have a $10,000 deposit with Scott. And let's say they get, some sort of VA or FHA loan or something, and it's 100% financing. Let's just say, their loan's $100,000. In essence, they're going to get $10,000 back at closing because it's cash back to them, because that money is, that's part of it's deposit, but it's part of the purchase price. They're already pre-purchasing part of it. And, let's say their down payment is 20% and they've already put down 10%, then they'll just have to come to the table with the additional 10%. Again, I'm disregarding closing costs, but hopefully that makes sense. I'm just asked to unmute you again if you have a follow-up question.
No, that was it. I was just wondering from Scott if he got pushed back on that, because now you're doing basically 6 plus 10, so 16%. or does that, get reduced from the balance? I just wanted to see, was there any pushback for those two, deposits? Obviously educating them up front, but just wanting to see.
Oh, you mean like when they purchase, when they're coming to the table initially? Do people have problems with that deposit, or when they're going to a closing table to buy it?
Going to the closing table to buy it, because obviously you're explaining up front there's this initial deposit, but educating them that they're going to have another, down payment plus closing costs at the end of the process, and then they have a year to save that money. How has the conversations gone around that? So
Yeah.
looking at it from a realtor and a lender standpoint, as for clients.
Typically going in, they know what their down payment's going to be on whatever type of mortgage they're going to get. And a lot of first time home buyers, there's money out there where they're, the most they're putting down is 10%. So if they have my option deposit, they're getting back, plus the security deposit too. When they buy the house, they're getting their security deposit back too, and they can do whatever they like with that. So, but I do know some people have to buy houses at 20% down for, whatever reason. And, they have to know that going into the agreement with me. It's like, okay, what'd your mortgage guy say you'd have to come up with for down payment? And so we had that conversation early, I would say, if they have to put 20% down. So, yep. That help?
I think Jason muted her again.
No, if she mutes, it's hard to
Yeah.
unmute without asking to be unmuted. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I knew you were going to say, if anyone else got any other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll get to them. But I do want to, since we have some bonus time here, I do want to ask Scott, because he's a little bit of a ninja and he's got me involved in some deals and I got him involved in some deals. He's very good at identifying partners. And you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did have a partner when you did this rent to own model. I'm sure some other people on here, are looking at, finding partners. Some people have capital, some people have the ability to find deals, some people have the ability to do the deals. How did you vet your partners? And if you want to talk a little bit about that, because I know it's something you're very passionate about as well.
Oh, shoot, I gotta unmute Scott.
Now you muted everybody.
I didn't mute him, he muted himself.
Yeah.
If you mute yourself, then you gotta ask to be unmuted. There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. I muted myself. Just with partners, a lot of times it comes down to trust. Who's somebody that you can do business with that you think you can trust? A lot of my partners that I did these with, they were like contractors and rehabbers that were friends. They would do the work, I'd put the deal together and I'd structure it, and then we'd form a partnership based on that. But the biggest thing on partnerships is, if you want to do business with people that you trust and that there is quite a vetting process on doing partnerships. But that's how I'd look at it, is somebody that I know and trust, or somebody that I would do business with. And that's how I typically would find my partners in these deals.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. That seems to be a lot revolved around your investing life, because I know some other things you got going on, and you really do try to align with people you're going to succeed with. And I think that seems to be common, not only in the deal that you're doing, because essentially you're creating a partnership with the person that's renting to own your property, or you're creating a partnership to even fix the house up on the front side. So those are really good points. Michael Cunningham's asking, do you give the option money back as a cash or as a deduction on the HUD, similar to their deposit? And also, I don't know if you're able to share any paperwork or if there's somewhere you could direct people to find more information on this subject, because you're not, guys, this is a guy that's just doing deals. Scott is not a guru by any means, in the sense that he's not selling any information. He just does it because he likes it. So.
Yeah, I've had a lot of success in the past with this. I've changed things up a little bit because we're traveling, my wife and I. So I'm investing in different assets. I tell people, do this in towns that or neighborhoods that to do this remotely would probably be a little bit harder. I'd go back to Rochester. I probably could find a property and do a rent to own on it and such. But I've changed since I've moved in November. I've changed asset classes, but I had a lot of success with this. I can send in the rent to own agreement. You really want to get with an attorney because it's really state by state on the rent to own agreement. You know, I'd like to share mine, but it's very specific. My attorney did it up for New York State, and I wouldn't want somebody to use it and get into trouble with my rent to own agreement. So that's why I hope it's okay. I'll share my presentation, but my rent to own agreement, I'd prefer just not to on that, if that's okay.
And I think just to clarify this, because this has come up a few times related to, do you give the option money back as cash or deduction? It's all right. It's a deposit, just like any real estate transaction. It gets credited on the settlement statement on the HUD one. They're not getting cash back. It's going towards the purchase price. If they're buying it for 100 and they put down 10,000, 10%, they owe 90 now. They owe 90, and it's all transacted through the title company at closing.
And if they're buying it for 100 and only putting 3% down, you know, I give them back the difference. You know, I'm certainly not going to hold it.
Yeah. Well, it's getting
money.
Well, it's getting deducted. It's all credited. It's all coming back on the HUD that way. Also, Elena said, Scott, how do you choose to go ahead and do 10% down payment versus 15 or 20? And I'll let you answer this, but I'm pretty sure the answer is ideally you want to get as much as you can, right? The most vested interest, but at the same time, you know, someone might not have 20% to put down right now. I'll let you answer that question now.
Yeah, that's not where the green lights that Ian talked about. You know, somebody comes to the table and says, hey, you know, I'm willing to put up a 20% option deposit. You know, that's a big green light. It's kind of like, okay, this person's serious about buying this house. He's going to put up a 20% option deposit. I typically ask for 10% because for most first-time home buyers, they're buying a house for 150. To come up with $15,000 cash option deposit, it's a stretch. But like I said, if I have a candidate who's qualified and is putting up a 20% option deposit, and I have another candidate who's qualified and only putting up a 10% option deposit, that 20% option deposit goes higher on the stack ranking with me.
Yeah, of course. Well, if there's any other last minute questions, this is the time to raise your hand or chat them, and we'll get through this because we're going to wrap this up in about a few more minutes. Sabrina, related to your question, so this method is not good in a market where the home prices are 400,000. They absolutely could be. It doesn't. Again, first time home buyers. I'm guessing you're probably in some areas of DC, and a first time home buyer price in DC is 400,000, if not higher, in a lot of areas of Northwest. A lot of areas of everywhere, Northeast, in every quadrant in DC right now. So the model works. The setup is the exact same, right? You know, it doesn't matter if you're in a market where it's $50,000 or $400,000. I don't think it might necessarily work that great in, you know, a luxury market, right? You know, like a high end luxury market. Now it may. I mean, there's deals that I've seen, you know, in the past where people, and I've never done a deal like this, but in essence it's the same concept, where someone will come to me and be like, hey, can you help me buy it? Can you help me buy this deal? I don't have all the money right now. You know, can you buy it? And I'll put down some now, and then I'll buy it back from you, or set it up, something like that. And that's at all price points. But I think the key takeaway is first time home buyer. And if the first time home buyer is buying it at 400,000, then that works. It just happens that Scott's in a market that his was around 100, 150.
Yeah, and if you want to start to get complex, which I was already thinking about, and I've approached a few of these, I haven't been able to close one, but if you're looking at an apartment building with a super distressed owner and you can't structure the deal right away, you could potentially master lease and do an option to buy. You could do a commercial property, master lease, option to buy, right? Like it's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
They're just called a little bit different terminology, and you could do it at a larger scale if you so choose. So again, you know, like with everything else that we talk about on this podcast or on these monthly meetups, it's just another tool in the box. You might come across an apartment building, another deal, be like, you know what, I don't have all the cash now, but I do have 50 grand. Maybe they'll option it for me. And it's a great way to get involved into other properties.
That's a really good ending point, Ian, because that's true. You know, get creative with this. This is just like you said, this is just one strategy. I mean, most all of us are vested in a lot of different strategies over a lot of different property types and asset classes. And it's just getting creative and using different strategies of, hey, where's the money coming from? It doesn't have to come from this one source, it can come from multiple places. You know, this deal might not work as a rental property, but it could work as this. This deal might not work as a flip. I mean, I love the fact that on some of these deals, like you said at the beginning, and we all agreed with, is like these, you know, you can buy skinnier margin deals using a strategy like this because the numbers still potentially work. And it could be a property that you don't want as a long-term rental, right? You know, because, you know, it could have historic, not the best tenants that want to, you know, that you're going to attract there, but you might attract the right homeowners. So get creative with it. I think that's smart.
Scott, I'm going to ask you two last questions. One, what is the hot book or podcast that you're listening to or reading right now? And two, where can everybody find you on the interwebs or get a hold of you should they have any other questions or want to follow up?
Okay. A book that I read, The Daily Stoic. It's a little one page every day, kind of be the right person type thing. It's a simple read. It's one page, The Daily Stoic. I read it every day. And you just repeat it every year. Another big thing that helped me was the Pumpkin Plan, or The One Thing, the Pumpkin Plan. I was doing a lot of different things and I was doing them good, but it wasn't, you know, like really great at any of them. And the Pumpkin Plan kind of helped me really define and focus. What are you good at? What do you like to do? And, you know, go after that. So the Pumpkin Plan was a big one for me. You know, you always have the classics, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Think and Grow Rich. You know, I have those classics too that I refer back to often. So that answers the first question. What was the second question was?
Where do we find you?
Okay. You can, I'm on LinkedIn. Of course, I'm on Facebook. I don't really have a website, I'll say, but you know, you can reach me. My email, actually it's 123selfstorage@gmail.com is my email address. Phone number, 585-943-1005. You can call me or get a hold of Ian or Jason. They know how to get a hold of me. Like Ian said, we talk often. I appreciate those calls. And that's the thing, you know, reach out to people, bring value too. You know, when you're looking for help or want to partner up with somebody or something like that, just bring value too. You know, when you go into a call or something like that, how can I help this person too? Yeah, I'm looking for help. I'm looking for information. What can I do to help them go and grow their business? So that's yeah, 123selfstorage@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me, or my cell phone. I can put it in the chat box if you want.
Scott, I super appreciate it. This last question will go to, how is it done? How is this done using first-time homebuyer assisted money? It's the same process. That's just a mortgage product. So don't get too held up on that. They can do whatever their mortgage broker or their banker is telling them that they qualify for. You know, that's fine. That's what you go with. You know, any of these programs potentially works for them.
Yeah, and thanks everybody. I appreciate everybody joining in. I know it took time from your night, you know, maybe away from your families and stuff like that. But I just hope I was able to help some people. And you know, if more people look to do this, look at all these homeowners, you know, these new homeowners that we can help who think they may never be able to buy a house. You can do it. Man, the satisfaction you get from that is just tremendous. You won't believe it when you're sitting at a closing table with a family, a husband and wife, and they're crying because they're so happy they're able to buy a house, and you help them to do that. And that, you know, that's what I want to do. But also here, sharing this information, I hope I was able to help everybody else too. Thanks, everybody.
And guys, Scott was nervous. He doesn't do these often. Appreciate it. I made Jason unmute everyone and clap it up, but that'll take another hour. Appreciate you, man. And we'll have to have you back on the Real Estate Reserve podcast and discuss some of your other stuff.
I got to figure out how to do that. I would like to.
Yeah, he can't unmute all, so I'll clap it up for you.
Didn't we try to do that last month because it was your birthday?
Yeah, and then I bailed out, so we're not going to celebrate my birthday again. But
yeah,
appreciate you guys. We'll be back next month. So
yeah, I got you. Yeah, so next month, July 21st, put it on your calendar. You'll be getting email reminders. Anyone have any ideas related to topics? I don't think we have July 1st booked out. We probably will this upcoming week. So email me at jason@hardmoneybankers.com. jason@hardmoneybankers.com if you have any ideas for topics or presenters, speakers, and yeah, we'll see everybody then. Thanks so much.